Okay, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a review for you from the brand Vario. A little bit about them. They are a Singapore-based micro brand that are really known for their straps, but they not too long ago started releasing watches, which a couple of you've actually seen on the channel before. Now this particular watch is their 1918 Trench, and this is the white dial model with white lume. Now, this type of watch, being known as the Trench watch, some key common characteristics and design language about these types of watches. Of course, they're World War I era timepieces that were essentially the transitional step between pocket watches and the more modern wristwatches we all know and love today. So they have this modified pocket watch aesthetic, but they've of course removed the finicky protective lids that proved cumbersome in combat while wearing gloves, while also adding these wire lugs for single pass-through straps. And then you could use those with or without the option of a bund style leather cuff underneath, which you're going to see here, kind of a modern reinterpretation of that, which also, of course, was a functional piece that would protect the wearer's skin during extremely hot or cold climates, whether you're, out in the trenches or let's say up in a cockpit where it can be very, very cold or very hot, let's say behind a machine gun. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys, so of course, Vario is known for their straps, but also for the cases. So this is the case that it came in, and you can see it's branded and has a nice solid zip on it. Very useful little travel case, little microfiber cloth, and everything just goes in there really quite nice. And it's a great colorway, reminds me a lot of kind of Marine Corps coyote green, kind of olive drab colored way, and it kind of has a little bit of a draw, and that touches into that color palette here. These are single pass-through straps that would work with these types of wire lugs, but you can see here it's featured on this really interesting and era style appropriate anyway bund strap, which is great. And you can see, first thing I'll do is show you guys how this works. So since these are wire lugs, essentially it screws on and off through here for you to be able to use a two-piece strap. You are going to want to wear it with the bund cuff underneath, because if you don't, these screws would dig into your wrist. So really what you'd want to do is, if you weren't interested in wearing the bund, you should just swap it out with one of these available straps, which, as you can see, color-wise, perfect way to show how versatile this piece is, because look at it matched up with the blue, a lot dressier, or with the green, all of a sudden it becomes a lot more casual, which I think is really cool. And yeah, let's just take a closer look and appreciate this piece. Let's go over some of the specifications. So first off, the price is $368 direct from Vario's site. This is the 40 millimeter version. So there is also a smaller variation available as well. But I think 40 millimeters is a nice sweet spot for this particular type of watch. Although the smaller version I'm sure works fine, but I do have a bit of a larger wrist at probably closer in between 7¼ and 7½, depending on how high or low I wear it compared to the wrist bone. Now, this diameter is 40 millimeters. It's also only 12 millimeters thick, with a 46.7 lug to lug, and it is made out of 316L stainless steel. It has a sapphire, which is double domed with inner AR coating, so you can see, very little distortion even at very, very harsh angles. So really nicely done from that perspective. And then we get into this polished bezel, which is fixed, and I think it has a really nice contrast against the round brushing here. Also signed screw down crown, very cool feature. And then inside, although you can't see it, but I will show you the etched case back, very nice. As you can see, let me maybe try to find the right side up. There you go. Check that out. Very, very cool. And you can see not only imagery etched there, but also some specifications as well. So very tidy and very nice from that perspective. Now you couldn't see the movement, but what's inside here is actually an automatic Miyota 82S5, which ticks at 3 hertz or 6 ticks per second, and it still is going to sweep relatively smooth, mostly because it's on this really small sub dial versus having a traditional second or central seconds hand, which I shouldn't say is actually traditional. Technically, this is traditional to have a sub dial for your seconds. I think people actually, if you get down to it, the central seconds is actually a complication. But correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that, or praise me for my horological referencing if I'm right. But yeah, so traditionally this is also how, of course, a pocket watch would go, and the historical versions of this would have these really small lugs. Like this is more traditional at 20 millimeters, but typically they'd be really small. They would just kind of run straight through the back. It looked a lot more like a hack job versus here. This is, I think, a lot more purposeful and modern. And, Vario is not the first one to kind of update that style and that silhouette, but I think they do a great job, especially here. I love the versatility on this nice gray bun strap with the white, and then, the non-aged elements. So what else, guys? Well, the dial is a really nice white enamel dial. Also, the hands have this really nice polished, setup there. But they actually have to my eye, they have a bit of a tint to them, almost like kind of a black chrome, which actually does help it contrast really nicely against this very stark white dial. It's very clean, which I like, and I think it makes it a little bit more versatile versus some of the more kind of mustardy options that are going to look more like that kind of faux patina effect. Now, there is not a date on here, so it is time only, and the lume does glow green, and with this screw down crown, you're actually getting 10 atmospheres of water resistance, so 100 meters. Not that you would take this watch diving or anything like that, but it is nice to know that it can take a good splash or in the rain, or whether you're doing the dishes or anything like that with that screw down crown. The main thing is it's going to ensure that the crown is in the right position. Now, there are plenty of watches that have 100 meters of water resistance without a screw down crown. The main difference is because the crown isn't screwed out, if you were to accidentally unplug the crown, you would lose that barrier. Here, because the crown is screwed in, it doesn't mean that it has a bunch of extra seals or anything like that compared to a normal 100-meter water resistant watch. It just means that that crown is secure, which means that that seal will also be secure. So very nice from that perspective. 20 millimeter wire lugs, and I will say that with this here, it does add a little bit more thickness to this piece, so I am down to the last couple of inches when I do put this on wrist. But with all that said, let's actually get this piece on wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, on my 7 1/4 / 7.5 inch wrist, you can see it wears pretty nicely, even with the bund kind of making it give it a little bit more wrist presence. You can see it's actually not like super high off of the wrist. It doesn't look like, crazy alarming. It definitely has kind of a steampunk aesthetic to it, and definitely would look a lot more sedate with just a more normal single pass strap there, regardless of the material. But I think to really capture the vintage aesthetic, something like this is cool. I mean, it's not necessarily my first choice of strap for it on the wrist, kind of for my style, but I will say that in terms of, I think, the way this watch looks and presents the best, it looks best like this in this configuration. So you can take a look there. Very nice, still quite legible, even at harsh angles. The materials here that are used are all quite quality. You can see that these straps are very nice. The stitching is quite uniform there. Nothing seems out of place. Everything looks really, really good. So, you know, again, probably not my first style, but I think this thing looks really, really cool. And if it suits kind of your aesthetic in terms of your style and the way that you dress, then, you know, this could be actually, I think, really cool and a great conversation starter. From that perspective. So with all that said, let's go ahead, get this piece off the wrist, and get into some loom shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. All right, check that out. So on that initial glow, it looks really great. The hands definitely are a bit stronger. No loom on that small seconds hand, but I don't think you really need it for this type of watch. You can see that the numerals there are loomed quite well, although by comparison and contrasting from the handset, they are fading a little bit, and I think that also has to do with just the style of dial. You can't necessarily cake it on too thick when you are doing an enamel dial. Also, I mean, I think we're kind of lucky that we even did get loom on an enamel dial. But one thing I really like to do whenever I do loom shots is work in some nice low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you'll be maybe coming in out of a building, walking underneath an overhang or the shade of a tree, or maybe just spending time in your favorite automobile. So you're not always going to enjoy perfect lighting situations, so it's nice to see some less than optimal mixed lighting situations, to include even some very high contrast lighting here, which typically would expose any type of factory defects within that finish. But you can see the light is just gliding over that case really nicely. Also, you're seeing the way that the textures work here. You can see that dial is just, man, it just has a wetness and kind of milkiness to it, which I think is really cool. And it appears visually, you know, unchanged a lot of the times, versus if you were to have a more matte dial, which plays with the light a little bit differently. Here, you're getting a very uniform look. Also, you can see the texturing on that nice leather. You can see that it is quite supple. And if you buy one of these, you'll feel that it's also quite supple. So with that said, let's go ahead and hit the lights. All right, guys. So in terms of closing thoughts here, you definitely do get some vintage inspired good looks with modern build quality while retaining, I think, you know, pretty generally modest sizing. You know, even in the larger 40mm scale, it doesn't seem oversized. And then in terms of model variants, there's various dial color options out there. Definitely check the site for availability, so check the links in the description. And then in terms of comparable models, both trench watches and enamel dials, you know, being more niche and thank you. Oh, thank you. Okay. Whoa, is there another one coming? Sorry, it's just a little dusty in here. All right. So comparable models, you know, trench watches and enamel dials are definitely very niche, and quite expensive typically in today's market. So I think it's really cool to see a combination of both in such a stylish and affordable model, guys. Like, this thing's under 400 bucks. It's barely over 350, and you're getting an enamel dial and you're getting a trench watch. So if you're into those things and, you know, you're looking within this space, I mean, this could be your grail, right? Like, this combination and this setup isn't something you're just gonna find, you know, in every micro brand's catalog. So kudos to Vario for really keying into something I think that's good, that's quite unique and special. So The bottom line, guys, I'd say if you're looking for a vintage style trench watch that you can wear every day, inside or outside of the trenches, I think this Vario 1918 makes a great case for itself. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please hit like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.